You're listening to the First Fight podcast, home of the people and stories behind the fight. I'm Jennifer Anderson, the host and creator. My goal is to give you a peek into the remarkable world of fighting and create a platform for fighters to tell their stories. In each episode of this series, a different fighter shares a transformative story of their first time. So today we're doing a special episode. We're bringing my husband, Corey Anderson, on again. And this episode, we're going to talk about losing. So listening to your teammate, Frankie Edgar's podcast, he was touching on that subject. And I thought it'd be interesting to kind of delve a little deeper into it. So thanks for coming on the show, Corey.
Thanks for having me, Jamie.
We're both tired parents, about to fall asleep right now, trying to record this, but we'll do our best here. So, I guess to get started, I mean, I've been there with you through some of the toughest losses you've had. What would you say was the hardest loss for you to overcome?
Hardest loss for me to overcome would be probably my last one, the Jan Blachowicz fight.
And why do you say that?
I think that was the hardest one because, one, I'd already beat him. Two, I knew I could beat him again. I know I'm just a better fighter than him, even now that I lost, and it's all over. I know the Corey that's in practice and everything he does in training and everything is better than anybody in the 205 division, and especially Jan Blachowicz. Even on that night, I was better than him. It's just the fact that I made the mistake of going out there and fighting his fight and strayed completely away from the game plan and paid the ultimate cost.
You've lost by decision before and by knockout. What's harder to bounce back from? Like, was a decision more disappointing or is a knockout more disappointing?
I mean, to me, a decision is more disappointing because a decision means you were outworked by another man. Even though in my case, in the Shogun fight, if you go back, everybody and their mama, even his coaches and everybody believed when it was all over, said and done, I had won the fight. And then all of a sudden the announcement came that he won. And, you know, they flipped the script and act like they were super excited and they knew it. But even I remember marking everybody like, put your hands up, you won. I was like, no, he didn't. And even his coach was like, Pat, you had a good try, champ. It was a good fight, really good fight, champ. Keep your head up. And like everybody was cheering, saying I won, but I knew on the scorecards, being his hometown with everything going on in Curitiba, you know, they was going to give it to him. Seeing that it was his big homecoming, his hometown, his first time fighting there in the big soccer arena with all those Brazilians and everything going crazy, I just knew that I wasn't going to get the call or get the nod. But on that one, actually, I remember the whole flight home, I couldn't sleep because Mark kept talking to me about it. I remember getting home, laying in my bed, getting ready to try to fall asleep, and like I remember getting ready to shed a tear. And right before the tear hit, I grabbed my duffel bag, dumped all my stuff out, threw a bunch of clothes in, jumped in the car, and drove home. This is actually when we had just started dating because I remember you coming down to see me. You drove like an hour, whatever it was, to see me. I think we went and ate something. Then we came back to the house, and when we sat down, I passed out right away. I remember waking up tucked in, and you had texted me and told me I fell asleep and you left, blah, blah, blah. And it just took the comfort of being around somebody I cared about that wasn't on me about the fight or talking about the fight and everything that had me thinking about it, that put me at ease. So I have to say that probably, as for a loss, like knowing that I won the fight and they took the fight from me, that was probably the hardest one to come back from because I didn't want to go in there knowing a lot of my fights go to a decision. I don't want to go in there and get in a position where another ref or judge or something would have the opportunity to do that to me. It was kind of like living in that fear, getting ready to come back.
Now, obviously, I think The Jan Blachowicz fight was the most heartbreaking because of what was on the line, you know. Career wise, it was a would have been there was more implications, I guess, if you won, but I had like the hardest time probably with the OSP fight. I would say was the most um traumatic one as your wife watching, and just being on such a big stage at Madison Square Garden. Did that matter to you? Like the arena, the significance of the arena and the event at all?
No, none of that even registers to me. I remember before I did the Ultimate Fighter, they sent us a questionnaire and they asked like if you had the opportunity to fight in an empty arena with nobody or a jam-packed arena, which one would you gravitate more to? And I answered, I wrote my own thing, said I'll fight in the alley with just me and him, as long as the ref and stuff is sanctioned and go on my record. That's all that mattered to me. I'm going out here to fight and get a win. I don't care who's there and how many people. Which is like right now with the COVID going on and Bellator and the Mohegan Sun, I felt that was probably the most comfortable fight for me. You know, there was no pressure, no fans, no anything. You just out there with you, him, your coaches, and the ref. And yeah, no background noise, no nothing else. So it's so much easier for me to focus that way, and it feels just like I'm back in the gym.
The OSP fight, was that two in a row at that point in time?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you? I mean, I don't think you're like a lot of fighters. I think you're definitely better at bouncing back than a lot of people mentally. But how did you overcome? Like, there has to be some sort of voice in your head after that. You know, two in a row of doubt and lack of confidence. Like, how do you overcome that mentally and have that confidence going forward?
I mean, after any loss, a breakup or a loss of a family or a loss in competition, anything, you always have a doubt in your mind. That's just losing is a negative situation. So the biggest thing is just to turn it into a positive. And I remember after the Jimmy Manuel fight, going in the back, and Mark and Ricardo and Nick, everybody had their heads down and super sad. And the same thing I said to you and the family through the cage after the Jan fight. And I said, what y'all so upset for? And we talking about, bro, you just got knocked out in the main event, your first main event, blah, blah, it was your big shot, and you got knocked out. Aren't you upset? Like, coach, I grew up losing. I lost my whole life until I was a sophomore in high school. So I'm used to it. And we're going to lose. But I did all those losses, and look where we are now. I've been winning throughout most of my career. So guess what? Losses are going to happen. The fact is, we're healthy enough to go back to the gym, go to the drawing board, and do it all again. And that's just the mindset. Long as after the loss, I'm healthy enough to do it again, there's no reason to really be sad about it. Like I tweeted after the Jan Blachowicz fight. So I got to the locker room, I grabbed my phone and said, it's been 5 minutes. My one coach always told me, you got 5 minutes of soak and it's on to the next one. Well, now we just got to wait and see what's next. Not unfortunate, but fortunately for me, you know, I ended up getting out of my UFC contract and going somewhere else and with better possibilities for me. So in that 5 minutes of sulking, you know, I feel like when it was all over said and done, I got the better end of it.
Was there ever a time that you questioned, you know, the path you're on, like career-wise? Did you ever think maybe I shouldn't be doing this?
I mean, like I said, in that 5 minutes, that's definitely a thought that goes through your mind when you sit there thinking. And even in training and practice, you have those bad practices, especially after a loss. You can have a awesome camp and then one bad spar and your whole mind goes wrong. I think the biggest fight for me when I had that was after the second loss, going into the Pat Cummins fight. You know, it was my first time going against another high level wrestler, and I wasn't worried about him knocking me out, but it was a fact like getting that third loss. I've never lost anything since after my sophomore year in high school. After I started winning, I had never lost anything 3 times in a row. So thinking about that fact, if I get that third loss, like it'd be possibly bye bye for me, you know, because 3 and out, and you're getting released from the UFC. But like I said, I always knew what I was capable of. I knew, and I know now that I'm still one of the best in the world. So the biggest thing is just making sure you always keep that belief, always having that positive speaking to yourself through the day. You got to remind yourself that. But you're always gonna have those thoughts. I think the thoughts really hit me during the press media, and AC before the Pat Cummins fight. They kept asking like, "Oh, so you've been knocked out 2 times in a row? How do you think your chin's gonna hold up?" Or then you watch Pat's interview and they ask him the same thing, like, "Oh, Corey has to touch your chin. What's your plan? Do you have a plan to take him down? You plan to go after it?" And then you start thinking. You hear it a lot. You hear that stuff in the media and what things they say in the media a lot, and you start to think about it, like, man, well, if I get touched again, I'm gonna go out. I remember the first sparring session after coming back from getting knocked out 2 times in a row. That was a thought. I remember going with more of a lower level guy because I figured, like, well, I know he's not gonna hit me that hard, but if he hits me and I get rocked, then that means we to go ahead and just walk away from it. You all because you hear what the people saying, what the media is saying. You try to block it out. You can ignore it as much as you want, but it's still in your head. And when you get in training, you get in those situations, you get rocked, or you hear people saying, "Oh, he's gonna get knocked out by the wind blowing." You hear it over and over and over, and you don't know because you haven't been hit again. You get weary, but then once you get hit and you realize you're fine, it goes away until you have another bad practice, and then all those thoughts come back through your head again.
I think you're different in the sense that, like, I think there's two types of people and fighters where once they get knocked out, they're like gun shy fighting. I think they're afraid that it'll happen again. And then some people, like you, I don't think, like, you don't act like getting knocked out. I don't feel like it holds you back at all going forward. Don't you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk through, I guess, for someone that doesn't fight, what that's like for you? And I'm sure it's different for everyone else, but like when you get knocked out, did you know what was going on? You forget anything? Like, how quickly does it come back to you what happened, or how do you realize what happened?
I mean, I've said to you before, like when I talk to fighters after they're fighting, I hear or coaches say, "Oh, he didn't know what was going on." To this day, I've been knocked out 4 times. Yeah, and my 4 knockouts, I've remembered every incident. I remember what happened right before it. I remember where we are. When we wake up and they ask me the questions, I always answer them. And no, it was actually during the Gian Vellante the first time I got knocked out, or TKO, whatever they put it, was still standing. And I remember when the lady grabbed me and I came to, she's like, "Sir, do you know where you are?" So obviously you got to stop in the fight. So I got knocked out, and she's like, "Yeah." And the next fight after that, it's like every time a ref grabbed me, it's like if I don't remember hearing no last bell and the ref grabbed me, first thing I say is, "I must have got knocked out, huh?" And they're like, "Yep." And that's just, I don't know. I've always remembered the fight. I remember who I'm fighting. I get up, I talk to my opponent. I remember all the strikes and the big hits. I remember after the OSP fight, me, you, who else was it? Buddy of mine from college. We all went to the bar downstairs, Carl Reed, and we were literally having a conversation about literally the whole fight. I remember the first head kick he hit me with and knocked my mouthpiece out. He was talking about me when I took him down. He stood up and I mat returned him. And we literally had the whole conversation going up into the knockout. And I remember exactly the moment before the knockout. It's just I don't remember the kick landing. And I mean, as for the fact of getting gun shy from it, I think the main reason why I don't get gun shy is because it's not like, for instance, like the Curtis Blades Derek Lewis fight last night. Curtis Blades got knocked out doing what he does best, wrestling. I've never been knocked out in the midst of doing what I do as a game plan. I always get knocked out when I stray away from the game plan. OSP, Mark Henry said, only the way he's going to catch us if he hits you with that left head kick, so don't go right. I slipped right, I got hit. OSP or Jimmy Manuel, Mark Henry said, only thing he can get you is that big hook. Don't circle into that hook. Don't circle into the hook. If you see him coming, you got a third level, duck it. Gian Vellante, the only way he's going to knock you out is with an overhand right. These guys, you don't have anything better than you other than the overhand right. You got hit with the overhand right. And then the Jan Blocker, which was We knew he had Polish power, and we talked about he's going to be throwing a big right hand, big right uppercut. You just can't be standing there in front of him trying to strike, because when you throw that right hand, we know he has the power to knock you out. And unfortunately, I wasn't standing there, but I threw a kick from way close distance, which is something Mark yelled at me for since I've been here. And I just had learned my lesson until right then on the big stage.
Do you feel like that's in the back of your head? Like, I don't know, when it's so specific? Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And then it's like manifests itself somehow.
It's just like when you see cartoons, they also don't touch that button. Don't push that button. The whole show to tell you don't push the button. In 1 second, you leave them alone. It's like, what, this button can't be that bad, and they touch it, And it's similar, something like that. Because in your head, you're thinking like, I can't go right, I can't go right. But at the same time, the Glover fight, it was the same thing. It was, we can't let him take you down. We know you're a better wrestler, and you know you got good enough jiu-jitsu to keep him getting submitted, but we don't want to get underneath him because that's his game plan. So we got to make sure we don't get taken down. But at the same time, it's like you don't want to be standing in front of his big punches. He throw big, heavy punches. So don't get caught standing still. In the beginning of the fight, you'll see, or was it the beginning? No, beginning, he got me backing up to the cage and got me standing still and threw the big 3-punch combo, and I shot and got out of there. Then later on, he did the same thing, and I was moving, and all of a sudden, I know where I just stopped and stood still, but I countered back with a right hand that hit him in the temple and rocked him to push me off. And I don't know if it's so much the fact that you're thinking about, like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And then the moment you stop thinking it, you do it because it was like the last thing on your brain. Or if it's just because your coaches know you have a habit of doing that so much. And that one time you stop thinking about it, you go back to that habit. You realize you haven't done it and you just freeze up or you make that mistake again. And that's why in practice, I need to focus on concentration and focus on not making those mistakes in practice. If I don't do it in practice, it'll transition into the fight. So I don't have to worry about thinking it. It's just second hand or second nature.
What would you say is the hardest part about losing?
The hardest part about losing is facing your family. You always gonna have fans saying something, win or lose. You always got people gonna talk trash. Like I said, you're only as good as your last fight, but I mean that's only to some of them because I had went on a 4-fight winning streak and people were still talking about my first loss to Gian Vellante. So the people are always gonna talk. The hardest thing for me is facing my loved ones, and I think the hardest moment in my career was I remember going home and visiting. It was after the OSP fight, I believe. And I think that was because it was the last time I had got knocked out for a while. And my mom had said, I can't sit there and see that no more. She said, I've been in all your matches since you wrestled through kids club and high school. I've been in all that. But I can't, if you plan on doing that and you don't want to take this serious and you're going to end up knocked out again, I can't go to your fights anymore. I don't want to see that. And when she said that, that's when it really hurt because like she said, she's been at all my matches. I've always competed and been able to look in the crowd and see my mother there. And to feel that she didn't want to beat her anymore, I realized I'm really hurting my mom. And my dad told me after the Jan fight, when she's seen them all, she sat right there in the crowd. She's never left. Usually my dad is the one to get up and leave. But he told me, in some reason your mom knew what was going to happen. What do you mean? I asked her, I looked at her like, what you doing? And she was getting up, getting ready to leave. And she said, he ain't moving his feet. He about to get knocked out. And that's what happened. And that probably was the second worst feeling of it. The family aspect for them to be there and see it. But for my mom to already call it because she knew if he doesn't move his feet, he gets standing still. Like I said, if I stray away from the game plan, that's when I'm going to get caught. She knew the game plan. I told her I'm going to move my feet and wrestle. You move my feet and wrestle. And I wasn't moving my feet. And she called it. And
what would be your, I guess, best advice to give someone that is a fighter trying to overcome like the mental, hurdles of having a setback like that?
You gotta, just like everything else, you gotta know your worth. You gotta know how good you are and how invested you are into this, Before every fight, especially before I head to the arena, I do the same thing. I go to the bathroom I look at myself in the mirror. Same thing I did before I went serious with fighting. I remember being in the dorm room as an RA. Went in the bathroom, closed the door, turned the lights off. Well, the lights was on. I was looking at myself in the mirror. They offered me a chance to fight pro, and if I wanted to do it seriously, and I had to go back and just ask myself, like, is this something we really want to do, or is it just gonna be a hobby? Like, we already had that first fight. Now they want you to really fight. Like, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this all the way. We're gonna do it serious. If you're serious about it, we're gonna go all out. And I said, all or nothing. I'm gonna turn the lights off and just sit there, lean up against the sink, just looking at myself in the mirror in the dark. And I probably about 5-10 minutes, just making sure this is exactly what I want to do. There's nothing else I want to do. I'm really dedicated to this now. I turn the lights on. I asked myself, what's the answer? And I said, let's do it. And that was it. And the same thing now, before every fight. You know, I do it when I get a fight. And when I pray before I go to the arena, I do the same thing. I go to the locker or the bathroom. I tell myself, all right, Corey, you know what time it is. We're about to go out there. You're going to get hit. You're going to get kicked. You could get something broke. You could get knocked out. You might get taken down. Are you ready for that? Is this really what we still want to do? Is this what we're going to do? We're here now. Can't back away. It's what you want to do, or we're going to call it off. And the same thing. I sit there, look at myself for a little bit. All right, we really want to do this? Let's go. But if in my mind, at any point, I got a doubt that I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. That's the same thing. If I feel like if some of these fighters out here that's getting knocked out and they losing all the time, and I don't feel like they really want to be there. But the aspect of getting the money they're getting and the life they live, some people just don't want to go to work. Some people, it's like all they know is competing, so they just want to do it. And as for me, it's like I have bigger plans other than fighting. Fighting, and I posted something this week on my Instagram. Fighting is what I'm known for, but it's not going to be what I'm remembered for. There's so many other things I want to do, but right now, I'm not done fighting. I still want this. I still got that hunger. So every time after a loss, it's easy to bounce back because I ask myself first, is the hunger still there? Or like, are we just here just to be here, or are we still serious? And the answer is still, we still here. We still hungry. We still serious. We still got to get that belt. And it's easy to get back into the gym and bounce back when you got the right mindset. When you realize, like I said, I think another big thing I tell everybody, all my losses, I've never been beat up. I've never been manhandled. And none of my fights, there's never been anybody to go out there and just straight mollywop me and beat me around and then I get knocked out. It was either I was dominating the fight and I got caught, or I made a mistake early and got caught. But no one has ever just straight out there and made it to the point where I was mentally broken, ready to quit, and then just put me away. So that also helps, knowing like these guys aren't better than me. I'm just beating myself by making mistakes. And again, I'm just younger in the sport, so I realize I have to come in with the right mindset and just be focused. I have to stay focused for 15 or 25 minutes and just get it done. I can't go out there making mistakes.
I guess to finish up, what would you want to tell, the fans or people who don't do this, who don't understand? How would you help them, I guess, relate to being on that stage and falling short? A lot of people are critical and have things to say, and or a lot of people are, I mean, I talked about this with Eddie, like your loved ones that don't want to see you lose too, but they don't understand really necessarily what you're fighting for. What would you want to tell them?
I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't tell them anything because, like you said, they don't understand. It's just like the racism and the Black Lives Matter and everything else going in the world. I can try to explain to people, like people that want to know, but at the end of the day, after I finish giving them my spiel on it, they're gonna say, "But what if this?" or "I feel this," because they don't understand. And just like someone of another race trying to understand being black, you can't, because you will never be in my shoes. So unless you're willing to step in that cage and try it, it's just like I always say, I can tell you. I can show you better than I can tell you. But if you're not willing to learn by going there and finding out yourself, there's no reason even trying to talk to you about it.
Well, thank you for sharing. This isn't an easy thing to talk about, but it's, definitely the hardest part of it all. And I'm sure as a fighter, I know even just being your family member, it's a tough thing to go through. It's more, like Frankie said, it's more than just losing. Fighting's completely different. You know, you put a lot more on the line. It's not like a sport at all. So that's why we did this. I wanted to kind of just give a little window into what it's like, you know, in the lows. We always talk about the highs, or people always see the highs and think it's this glamorous life. They don't realize what goes on backstage, you know, after a loss and in your mind after a loss. And I know every fighter is different, but I just thought it'd be interesting to share a little bit more about it. So appreciate it. And we'll be looking forward to the big light heavyweight Grand Prix tournament coming up. You're fighting in April, so we're about ready to kick off camp and do it all over again.
Yes, indeed. But before we wrap it up, I want to turn the tables on you. I'm going to be the host for a second, and we're going to ask you a second. So we all know you used to fight as well, and being on the other side as a wife. So I want to hear on both sides, for you coming back as a loss for yourself, what make you want to keep going back and fighting, and then what makes you keep believing or make you want to still be a part of this with your husband after you see him taking big losses, and what make you believe or confident in him going back out every time?
Well, as a fighter, I can empathize what you go through, obviously. Like what I did, wasn't my career and wasn't on a big stage. Like, you know, I don't have a bunch of critics. You know, you have people that say things, but it's not like losing at Madison Square Garden. So it's not as much as on the line, but I definitely understand what it's like because I've done it before and I've lost before. What would make me remotivate me is just stubbornness, I guess. I always want to prove that I'm better, and I don't think I think the most disappointing part for myself about losing was I was just beating myself. No one that beat me was ever technically better than me, and it was something that I like had to keep doing to overcome, and I just didn't get to that point yet. That's why it was hard for me to stop doing it. I just wish that I had started younger, I guess, because for me it was just taking more time. So yeah, fighting myself has definitely made me more empathetic to what it's like when you lose, or anyone loses for that matter, but watching you lose is hard in multiple areas because it's hard to watch my husband get hurt or injured. There's always that concern, and then there's also I get really sad about like how hard you work, and you know, being set back in your career really bums me out. And then obviously I want people to see how good you are. I know how good you are and I believe in you, and you hear the critics, and there's always going to be critics, but I want everyone to know what you're capable of. So especially like with a knockout situation, and like you said, you've never been beat. If you were just beat, like, I wouldn't be upset because the better man won. But that's one thing that's really frustrating about fighting, is that the better man doesn't always win, especially at your weight. It's extra stressful because it really only does take one punch, and I'm not going to say anyone's lucky. Like, all the people that have beat you have earned it, you know, they threw the punch or the kick that finished the fight. That's what you got to do. It's, like you said, more on you for making those mistakes. I never, like, want to take away from their wins, but I just know that you are better than them, and 4 out of 5 times you beat them. So that is frustrating. That definitely makes it hard. And you just get nervous for the next one just because you're afraid that could happen again. And I always get nervous that you might not be telling me if you're nervous or like, like if you have concerns or whatever you need to work on or whatever. I want you to tell me that so I can. But ultimately, it always comes down to you. Like, you have to be right in your head to fight and to compete. So it doesn't really have to do with me. But being your wife, obviously, I always want to like do everything I can to make sure that you're in the right mental space and you believe in yourself. I've always believed in you, and I've never been to the point where I wanted you to quit. I know that what's meant to be is going to be. Things have worked out, I think, for the best. You don't always see it in the moment, but things work themselves out. It's hard to overcome. I don't like seeing it, but I know it's part of the game, and it's you or him sometimes, and we don't always end up on top, but I'm looking forward to the future. I don't think that like people have even had a chance to see really what you can do yet, and I think you're going to have that opportunity soon.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, I've said it in the last 3 fights. I really haven't even got to show my full skill set. Against Johnny Walker, it was one overhand right. It landed, and it was the start to the finish. Jan, it was like I caught with a big shot early, and then the last fight against Melvin Manhoof, I got to show my ground game, but not even really get to show my ground game because it wasn't like he was a high-level ground opponent, so I couldn't like show, I'm nolling his sweeps or I'm nolling this, I'm stopping that because my ground game is that good. It was just, I just took him where I was better than him at and just made him drown early. But I feel in this tournament, having 8 guys all capable of every aspect of mixed martial arts, this is where I get to finally go out there and show my improvements in all areas of being a mixed martial artist.
Hopefully you'll get that chance to show that to everyone. I have to like let go of the idea that people are going to see you the way I see you. But I think this is the perfect opportunity for you, and I'm excited about Bellator signing Rumble and Romero, and it makes everything a little more exciting, and it'll obviously that's some stiff competition, so when you win it'll really show people what you're capable of, and I'm looking forward to it. So again, thank you for coming on and opening up about this a little bit, even though you're stone cold on the inside, but we got a little bit out of you. So we'll be seeing you in April.
God willing.
A baby first, and then a fight. So we got a lot going on coming up.
That's the way I like it.
Well, thank you everyone for listening again. It's a topic I like to delve into a little bit more. I like talking about what's behind the fighters and the stories behind it and what goes through their heads, just to give people who don't do it a better idea of really what goes on and how hard it is. So thanks for listening again. You can follow us on Instagram if you're not, at The First Fight, or check out our website, firstfightpodcast.com. You can see all our old archived episodes, and you can follow the Instagram for all our upcoming episodes as well. So thanks again.